Welcome to another podcast with myself, Ronan, and my good pal Phil. Just to say, anything we state in this podcast, any facts, if we're wrong, we're open to correction. And it's also important to point out that any opinions expressed here are our own. So I hope you enjoy this episode of our podcast.
Okay, since it's our own opinions, we're going to start off with the Darwin Awards. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Now, I'm very sorry to if you know anyone who's done a stupid thing like a piano falling on their head or something like that. But specifically, the Darwin Awards, I'll try and explain it. It's people who do idiotic things, knowing that they have a chance at death, yet they persist in doing it. Would you say for some sort of glorification or some sort of statement, or
do you know? I actually think just to say a different opinion, I don't like. Very famous one is a fella or someone who is demonstrating to a bunch of visitors on a tall skyscraper how unbreakable the windows were, and he hammers on the window, and the window falls out, and he falls to his death.
Okay.
Now he would have had no inkling that he could have died. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just, as far as he's concerned, like,
he was testing a window.
Yeah, it's just testing a window, like the unbreakable window, and
Yeah.
then boom,
It would be better if they put the window on the ground floor and said, if you want to test the window,
try it there. Yeah.
try it there.
Some window installer dude did that window on a Friday afternoon.
It mightn't be really a Darwin Award, but there was a famous general in the American Civil War, and he was I don't remember what side he was on. I think he was on the Union side, and
on the side of northern aggression.
Exactly. And the two armies met, and his aide-de-camp said to him, General, would you please get off your horse? You're a sitting target. He said, I'm so far away. He said, you couldn't shoot an elephant from there. And 10 seconds later, he got shot.
Boom.
Dead. Fell off his horse. So that was his final line. You couldn't shoot an elephant from there.
That's some epitaph, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, on that vein, I was listening to the Rest is History podcast.
Yeah.
We're doing a series on Irish history.
Okay.
And in particular, Michael Collins.
Yeah.
And
of course, yeah. Ben
he
LeBlanc.
was, yeah. But the interesting thing was, okay, the story is he drove through Bell and Blah in the back of this open car, and there was an ambush, and he was shot dead.
Yeah.
But actually, when you look at the details of the story, they drove through it earlier in the day, same place.
Yeah.
And they went to some town in Cork where he was meeting a friend or whatever, and basically they got hammered, like they got stuck into some pints.
That's right.
And
I think it was Skibbereen they were in.
It's something, yeah, it could have been. And then they got back in the convoy, the cars, and anyone who was a professional military person would know you don't go back the same way.
Yes.
But they did. So they went back, and the guys who were waiting to ambush them were like, oh, great, look, they're coming back.
Yeah.
And what happened was, as well, when the ambush was sprung and the bullets were flying, the driver of Collins's car said, come on, we're going to get you out of here. And he said, no. And he hopped out of the car and started firing away with his own revolver.
I know.
And the only person shot was
him.
Michael Collins.
Yeah.
Because you see these American, when there's an attempt on American president's life, particularly mostly in the movie, thank God. The first thing they do is they bundle him into the car and they just haul ass out of there.
Yeah.
And that's what you're supposed to do.
I think, though, Cork at the time was very anti-treaty, and it still is now. It's quite a Republican county. Now, that stems from that the British had burnt Cork and all that stuff, so there was a lot of hatred.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. But he was trying to come down and sell the treaty down there, that type of thing, and they just weren't buying it.
I think he was a local guy too.
Yeah,
wasn't he?
it was very hostile country for him, even though he was from Cork. So he felt very safe in that county. I do know two things. I remember being there with my dad, and my dad was in the army for a few years, and he just got out of the car, looked up the ridge where the people who shot Michael Collins were.
Yeah.
It's a place called Bell na Blah, but it's very much, they picked it because it's a valley. It's not a huge hill, but it just means those in the valley are literally sitting ducks.
Yeah.
And
Dad, they had the high ground.
Yeah, and Dad got out of the car.
Like Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Exactly, yeah. And he just looked up and he said, "Turkey shoot." He said you couldn't miss Collins from there.
Yeah.
Now, it was amazing, as you say, that it was only Collins that got killed, no one else. But maybe he was just a bit too confident or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, again, had he listened to his aide-de-camp or whatever, his driver, they would have just got driven out of there and he probably would have been fine.
Well,
the fact that he got out of the car and started firing his revolver up there, because... he was drunk. I mean,
I do know a guy, and he's probably listening to this podcast. I won't say his name, but he told me one day about 10, 15 years ago that his grandfather knew the person who shot Collins.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was the same thing. He wasn't an army guy or anything like that. He considered it a lucky shot. He told his grandfather, and he never said... His grandfather wouldn't give the name ever. And
really?
Yeah. And my friend asked him quite a few times, it's one of those things from sort of history that the grandfather was just content that the name would die with him.
Yeah.
And but my friend tried to coax him to find out, and he just wouldn't say, But he did say that your man said he sort of got off a lucky shot and it happened to kill Collins.
I can see his point because, obviously it's a raw subject within Irish recent history, relatively recent, and obviously his family mightn't appreciate. They could be the object of hostility, I suppose. Oh,
that's one thing I found fascinating about Spain. I read a very good book about the Spanish Civil War by Richard Overy or Anthony Beevor. Which one? I can't think. One of the great historians.
I know I've read Anthony Beevor's book. It's quite good. Yeah.
The Fight for Spain or something like that it was. And it's fascinating read. Now the problem is that you really need the patience to get through because it's not just two sides. In each side there's about another 10 sides. And there's factions and factions.
More so on the Republican side.
And there's factions within factions. But when I was in Spain, I do love northern Spain. It's a beautiful part of the world, Bilbao and Burgos and all that. I tried to talk to Spanish about it, and even Catalonia, a Spanish friend of my brother, they just won't talk about it. It's fascinating.
Really?
And he said, look, I'd really recommend you don't ask Spanish people this question. Now, he wouldn't call himself Spanish. He would call himself Catalan. Yeah. Oh. And he said, just don't talk about it. And it's amazing they haven't faced up to their history. They haven't. Yeah. They still live in a... Let's not talk about the Civil War because...
Let's sweep it under the rug.
Yeah, because even in a town, you had people killing people who had been neighbours for their whole lives. Yep. And suddenly you had these two political ideologies that just clashed. And I was there's a town called Guernica, which is where one of the first bombings were. I think I sent you a photo from Guernica, didn't I? Of the German bombers.
Yeah, you did actually. Yeah. And the famous Picasso painting is in...
it's in Madrid, in the museum.
Yeah, do you know it's in the Reina Sofia, Queen Sofia.
But it's a fascinating place, Guernica. They have a little museum there, and it's just a normal train station in the middle of nowhere. Not the middle of nowhere. It's about, say, 20k from Bilbao, and the little museum is the only place where they talk about the bombing.
Okay.
And it's quite fascinating to be in the square because the Germans were testing bombing coming over valleys and through hills, and you can see where the bombers came in.
Okay.
But there's a lovely little thing in the museum, and it's quite surprising because you don't think about it because it just looks like an ordinary library or something like that. But you go into this room, and what this room is, and I was there on my own because it was during winter. The room was like a Spanish house at the time in 1936, or was it 33? 36 or 33, the bombing? I'd say
36.
36,
I think the whole thing was 36 to
39. Yeah. And it was fascinating that what happens is through all these special effects, you're sitting at the kitchen table and suddenly...
It's like an interactive thing.
Yeah, and all these special effects happen and suddenly the house turns to rubble. I don't know how they did it, to be honest. So you're sitting there and you just hear this drone of these bombers overhead.
Yep.
And then you hear the bombs falling, and then bam, 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 getting closer, and then your house gets hit.
Yeah.
And the interactive thing just turns this beautiful Spanish, typical house into just a rubble, right in front of your eyes.
To feel the bricks.
Yeah, and it's quite an extraordinary thing. If you're ever down in Bilbao, I recommend getting the train out to Guernica. It's only a couple of quid.
Do you know what?
And doing that.
I think I mentioned this to you at some stage. We should do a road trip and take the car and go on the overnight. The ferry.
Yeah,
that'd be good crack.
But I think it's. So would you say Michael Collins was Darwin Award then?
Yeah, that's the thing. Maybe not, and I'll tell you why. Because there was drink involved, and we all do stupid things with drinking.
Well, what about the lad who went over the Niagara Falls in a barrel?
Yeah,
I'd say he was fairly hammered. And like, I'd have a bottle of vodka before I go.
Well, he probably had a bit of liquid Dutch courage before he got on the barrel.
Yeah,
but can you imagine? Like, this is a great idea.
Yeah.
You know?
A barrel,
and I'll be
which is just smashed him. Dear like, why do you think the barrel was going to protect him? I don't know.
A bit like what's the Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Which is the fourth one and not particularly well received by the critics, but I think it's quite hilarious. He escapes an atomic blast by getting into a fridge
surrounded by lead.
Yeah, and like. Because he doesn't realize he's ended up in one of these test towns in the middle of the Nevada desert, and it's in the 50s when they were still popping off atmospheric bombs. And he hears the siren. He looks over and he goes, "Ooh!" And you can see it up on the pylon a couple of miles away.
Jesus.
And that's the thing. He's looking around, and then he goes, "Ooh, lead lined," and he gets into the bloody fridge, and. The Russians are trying to get away in their car, but the explosion overtakes them. But just before they died, they see this fridge flying over them. It lands, thump, 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 and then it opens out. And instead of basically liquefied meat and bone, out comes Indy.
Yeah. Because lead is only useful for the radiation, not for the superheating of a bomb.
Crushed like a tin can.
But also, it would have superheated and melted the lead. And so,
apparently, people have studied this and said, "Is there any way he could?" And basically, no. And hence, it's become an expression. There's an older thing about jump the shark in Happy Days, and it's like when they're running out of ideas and they really should end the show, they do stupid stuff. Like, for example, Fonzie water skis over a tank with sharks. So hence, and it was like, oh, for goodness sake. And that was hence jumping the shark. But after that scene in the Crystal Skull, everyone was saying, for God's sakes, they've nuked the fridge.
Oh my God. It just, for some reason, when you talk about sharks there, I was watching this YouTube video of the back of a boat, and it was about 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. So it's all dark, And there was a guy swimming, and his mate comes out, and this is not made up now. This is no way.
Was this like a documentary?
No, it was just buddies just making a video of this guy swimming away.
Yeah.
And he said to his friend, he said, "Come on, Jimmy," whatever, get out of the water.
Yeah.
And Jimmy went, "Why?" He says, "I have to test the engines, and if you're in the water." And he said, "Well, why don't you just test the engines later? It's lovely swimming away." He was in the ocean.
Sure. Yeah.
And he says, "No, I've got to test them now because the oil pressure and this, that, and the other, right?"
Get your ass out of the water.
Jimmy came back and he went, "For God's sake, I was having a nice swim and all that stuff." And when Jimmy was on the platform, he turned around and he pointed to a great white shark that was behind Jimmy. And you see the great white. And Jimmy said, "What's that shit about the engine?" He says, "Well, if I told you there's a shark, you'd panic.
Yeah.
So I just told you it was
and
the
then
engine."
I guess splash around.
Oh my God. And you see the great white swimming past, and just the usual bigger than a boat, like he said, so it's a good way of getting someone out of the water without panicking,
Right.
I was like, holy.
They're not the apex predator.
The orca is.
Orca.
Yeah.
And there was a thing there, apparently conservationists said they're a bit worried about the great white population off the coast of South Africa.
That's right.
Because there was a pod of orcas going around, and
it was two brothers.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, and they were like eating the livers, like you do these sharks up on the shore with their livers eaten out.
And the sharks are the best part of a shark for an orca is the liver. It's
right.
You probably know it's full of something.
Well, is it iron and all that stuff.
And they wiped out about 17 to 20.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the great white. It's kind of like the orca is. It's called a killer whale, by the way, which is it's actually an accident of title. It's actually killer whale comes from the Norwegian whale killer. So it's not a killer whale; it's a whale killer.
It's just like the words in the wrong order.
Yeah. So we have this concept, obviously, that it's because it's a dolphin, as far as I know. It's part of that species.
Yeah, it's a mammalian, isn't it?
Yeah. And but they have
whales are too.
Yeah, but they are smart as. And I don't know if you ever watched David Attenborough, where there's a seal on ice, and then the four of them swim, and just as they get the ice, they dive under, use their tails
and flick the seal.
No, it makes a huge wave and breaks the ice up.
Oh, I see.
And they do it again, and the poor old seal's there looking at them, going, "Oh my God, they're getting closer." And then the matriarch sticks the head up, looks at the seal, and they figure out a way how to get the seal. Like, it's just so clever,
There's also another Attenborough thing like that, where it's a clip of the seashore, like the beach, where the tide is, the water meets the sand, and there's a seal going about its business, and the next thing, whoosh,
that's right.
orca up on the shore, eats him, and then gets back with the next wave.
You see, I do lots of sailing, long distance sailing, and I was off the Bay of Biscay, and we were outside. The reason the Bay of Biscay is so rough is because it's the continental shelf is there, so you get all the swells coming across from the US and Canada. They hit the continental shelf, they obviously rise up, and then they go into France as really bad, like quite big waves.
A circular kind of current.
Yeah, but that's why France has this sort of sea part of it. It's because the waves keep pounding the shore because of the shelf.
Yeah.
So we were outside the shelf, and I remember I was on watch. It was, daytime or something like that. And I was looking. You're looking out for ships or stuff. And then I saw this what looked like lightning. And I saw two things of lightning, and I went, "Ooh, that's odd."
Or like two sparks or
And
flashes.
and I was getting near, and I was going, "What the hell?" And then I said to the skipper, I said, "What the hell is that?" And the two of us were looking, and couldn't figure it out. But then as they got closer, they were actually whale blows.
Oh, like the spout.
The spout.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was 3 whales came up to us, and when you're passing by whales, one thing you'd be incredibly careful about is do not get between a calf and its mother.
Oh God, I can imagine.
Because the mother will just
destroy you.
Yeah. So we were consciously paying attention to where the calf was and where the mother was, because there was difference in size.
Yeah.
And there was another whale with them, but I don't think it was male, because I don't think they I think the males are loners, but
I think probably,
but the 3 of them came up, and so Michael, my skipper, he's a fantastic skipper, he said, "Right, let's deviate to the right here," because in theory we were passing them, but they were on the route. So we deviated slightly.
Yeah.
And we made sure that the calf was on the other side of the mother.
You were well away.
Yeah. But man, the 3 of them came up, and I never forget, they just lifted the eye up to look at us and put the eye back down again. But they were, except for the calf, the 2 of them were longer than the boat.
Wow.
And you look at this.
Humpbacks or?
I don't know what type they were, to be honest. They were big though, but you're so far, like we were about 1,000 miles offshore, and you're just like that's humbling. It just goes, because you just go, "Oh my God, that thing could sink me in." It just nudged me to sink me.
The amount of distance they can travel, and thinking of the humpbacks. Thank God, Captain Kirk and Spock got to them back.
Yeah, we nearly if you read old books of lore, but they do talk about the Atlantic Ocean of ships sailing across before whaling, or before. Well, whaling would have been a thing always, but
you mean before it was realised to be?
And apparently
destructive. Yeah.
You could literally walk across the ocean with the amount of fish in it, and whales. Like it was just teeming with life.
Yeah,
and it's relatively difficult to see now. Now, when you are sailing, you see a dolphin stick its head up. The dolphins are the funniest. One would stick its head up, and suddenly a pod of 100 is around your boat. And they're the messes of the sea. That's what I call them. They're good fun though. Yeah,
jesters or clowns. Yeah.
And but when it came to whaling, then I think we nearly wiped. I'm going to guess we nearly wiped 90% of the whales.
I'd say even more.
Would you think so?
Same with the buffalo, of course. and they did wipe out the dodo, didn't they?
That's right. Yeah.
The thing was, you had
Apparently,
these
it's very tasty. It was incredibly tasty.
and also it had no fear of humans, so we just sit there and you just walk up to it and club it. And,
Club it.
Yeah, hop in the frying pan there, mate.
Jesus.
Do you see those photographs from the old West in the States? And you see these guys on a literal mountain of bison skulls.
Yeah.
I mean, the parent of the Great Plains used to be just covered in herds of bison, and the guys, oh wow, this is a bonanza.
Was it for meat or for the fur?
Oh yeah, I think meat, the fur, everything. Oh, I wouldn't say anything went to waste, but it was, like a lot of things. Unfortunately, what is it? Actually, this has been a theme in some movies that humans are like a virus. They go into an area and multiply and basically destroy it. They either kill the host or.
Was that for the Matrix?
No, it's actually from Kingsman. Yeah.
Was it not for the Matrix? Remember you humans?
Oh, sorry, it was. Yeah.
Mr. Agent Smith.
Smith, yeah.
But it is true. It's kind of. But if you're like some poor guy who got to the States and you just see these plains where there's thousands of technically cows, just there,
loads of meat and fur. Yeah,
I presume the bison had it a fear because didn't the Indians used to follow them?
Well,
follow them when they were herding. And the tribes used to follow the bison.
They would obviously kill some of them.
Or kill one or two or 10.
Yeah, because they'd be isolated, maybe tribes. Although, do you know apparently the population of North America, with obviously indigenous people, was greater than the population of Europe when the likes of Christopher Columbus.
Is that right?
You know what I mean? Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. But so, if you talk about genocide, because whether by accident or by design, of course, they brought all these diseases that wiped out big populations. Plus, a lot of people, the way a lot of these reservation states are dry, like they were like prohibition, because the indigenous people in the States, a lot of them lack an enzyme called, alcohol dehydrogenase, and it's essential for breaking down alcohol. And if you have a very low level of it, which is commonplace in this population of people, if you like, you're wrecked on like a glass of whiskey or whatever. You're out of your mind. But compared to Europeans, who obviously through the Middle Ages in particular, selective breeding, evolution, it was a big advantage if you could tolerate loads of jar, because you're much better off drinking beer or whatever than trying to drink the water. It's filthy. So same with the Japanese. Apparently, they enjoy like their whiskey and their beer and all, but. It's a bit of a stereotype, but I think it's true. They get a bit wasted on something that'd be a starter for you and me.
I remember I was in Alice Springs up in the Northern Territories in Australia.
Yeah.
I got the train up from Adelaide, and
I think you can go all the way to Darwin.
They opened a track now from Alice up to Darwin. Yeah,
okay.
So you can go the whole way now.
Wow.
But previously, it's a train called the GAN.
Oh, I heard of it.
Yeah, and it's called a gang because they took over a load of camels from Afghanistan before the railway was there. Yeah,
okay.
And so they used to have camel trains that went up from Adelaide and Port Augusta up to Port Augusta I think it is, up to Alice.
Okay.
And so then they put the railway in and they call the railway the GAN.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but. Yeah. I was up there with this guy, MJ McBain. I'll never forget his name. Such a great name, MJ McBain. And he was an Aboriginal guy. And I lived on the streets of Alice for about 5 days with him.
Really?
And got to know lots of Aboriginals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the Aboriginals on the streets were all alcoholics, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And
again.
Yeah. They were outcasts. And
native populations, if you like, had no history of drinking alcohol. No history.
And what happens is that if you are an alcohol, and I don't know if the word is reservation they have in Australia, but because food is so scarce and things like that, if you hit the bottle, it means that you're doing no work in the community, you're doing no involvement with the upbringing of children, so they expel you.
You're basically
thrown out.
Wow.
And so it's kind of sad because the Aboriginals have nowhere to go because their own people have thrown them out. And they come into Alice and they're just functioning alcoholics, or not even functioning
Not
alcoholics.
even, just basically trying to get their next.
And they just sit on the
bottle,
streets
whatever.
and drink. They're
God.
absolutely no harm to anybody. But
No,
it's-
I guess not.
yeah, but they will never, they'll never be allowed home, but their home doesn't want them.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, and that's really
what do
sad.
you call it? Almost expelled, excommunicated from.
Yeah, because they booze. And I presume, is it the same for the Aboriginals as for the Native Americans?
Oh, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for other populations like in South America, anywhere really, actually, European settlers went and obviously brought, booze with them, and it was something they could trade with. So they say to the local people,
The white
"Here."
man's firewood, or
Yeah, I know, but it's true because
Yeah.
they just couldn't hack it. But
I remember watching a movie
Yeah.
called Master and Commander, and it's the,
with
Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe, yeah.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a good movie,
Apparently, the
actually.
books are very good as well.
Oh yeah,
But the first thing they do when they get the Galapagos is
Galapagos. Yeah.
is they start playing cricket, but then a few of the lads in the boat, they start brewing hooch. it's the first thing they do is get a still going,
their priorities
and
right.
just put anything into it, boil it, let it distill, and then you got grain alcohol. I mean, it's
wow.
it's their whole life is just booze. It's
What was
funny.
it? Actually, just you mentioned about the Aboriginal people in Australia.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, a guy I went to college with, he at one stage was working in Darwin. I think he was in Sydney, but he did a few months in Darwin as part of the training program in what he was in. And he had a lot of time for the Aboriginal people. He thought they were very hard done by, and mostly quite decent. The ones he was dealing with.
They are. I was back in Sydney, and MJ had told me that if you ever come across a group of Aboriginals in cities or something like that, generally there was a few of them in a park, and there was a guy there with about 3 or 4 girls, or not girls, females, and a few other guys. But I could tell he was the sort of chief. So, and MJ told me that they're very approachable, but you have to approach them properly. So what I did was that I got a bottle of whiskey and a few cheeseburgers, okay? But I stood there and MJ said...
Western imperialist.
MJ just said, stand about 40 or 50 feet back.
Yeah.
And just wait, okay? And your man will see you. He'll keep chatting away, blah, blah, blah. And he'll either raise his hand for you to come over. Now, I had a bottle of whiskey and a few cheeseburgers, which is probably part of the deal.
Yeah, totally.
And or else he'd tell you to shag off, okay?
Yeah.
And so I just did this. I tried this in Sydney, and he raised his hand. And MJ said that when you sit down with them, you're under his protection, and nothing is going to happen to you. Now, unless you're an asshole, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we talked for 3 or 4 hours, which was great. But it is that, he said, you do feel incredibly safe, even though you see other people passing by you, looking at you, saying, what's he doing there and all that stuff. But you are incredibly safe because your man has said, you're under my protection.
Right, and they take it seriously.
Yeah. And it was just, look, it was I was pissed and he was pissed and they were all pissed, I'm sorry to have to say that, but that's just the way it was.
I know. Well, sure, look, actually the other side about the Aboriginal population in Darwin is that they would sleep out on the grounds of the hospital. So any of them were patients in the hospital would sleep outside because they couldn't stand the air conditioning.
That's right.
It's just so alien to them.
How do you think air conditioning has changed the world?
Oh well, that's interesting because it has, surprisingly, because it's made certain parts of the world that previously were very difficult to live in, like the American South, really.
Which is most of the world, isn't it?
Well,
isn't most of the world, except like it's either freezing cold or boiling hot. Like we happen to live in a very nice climate up here.
Sure.
But
you look at somewhere like these growing economies, like hugely growing, like India and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If they want to attract white collar stuff, high tech, everything, you wouldn't do very well without air conditioning.
That's right. Yeah.
And it has had a big impact on politics in the United States in particular.
How's that?
Well, because up until say the mid '60s, right? The South, the sort of the Southeast, Alabama, Mississippi, all that. Yeah, they were all, same as they are today. Quite conservative, obviously. Unfortunately, racist and so forth.
Yeah.
But they weren't important really because they were only a small number. Yeah. And as you know, it's not the land that votes; it's the amount of people living there. But with the advent of, if you like, air conditioning, suddenly all these places in the South became livable. Right. Because you go from your air-conditioned car into your office or store, of course, get back to your home, air conditioning.
So you're talking about places like Memphis and
absolutely,
even the big cities.
New Orleans, for example. And as a result, these places, the populations grew significantly. Also because they were clever, because they knew, right, now we can attract people here because it's no longer unlivable. Yeah. And they were clever. They offered lots of financial incentives to move. And that has shifted political power in the States.
Of course, yeah, because then you can have like a working population living there.
Yep. Exactly.
They were saying that about political power, about the drainage of California. It's about 100,000 families have left California. I don't know, is that per year over the past few years, or maybe just last year? But they're moving to places like Texas, Arizona. I think
that's sort of stopping now. I think it's going back a bit, but that definitely was the case that people were moving from California to what we would consider more conservative, straight-laced Republican states, shall we say, because the cost of living was a lot cheaper.
If you look at movies, and I don't know if this is just Hollywood, but it's like In the Heat of the Night or Mississippi Burning.
I was just thinking The Heat of the Night.
Yeah.
They're all just sweating like crazy.
All sweating all day.
What's your man? The sheriff, Rod Steiger.
Rod Steiger.
Jeez, he's sitting there and he's just
sweat stains.
You feel icky looking at him. Yeah.
And that's at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m., and he's trying to get the air conditioner working and he can't work.
Oh, yeah.
Courtney, did you get the air conditioner fixed? But it looks, a Mississippi Burning is the same. And I always wonder, most of the casts in it are either extremely fat or extremely thin.
Yeah, I know, my God.
Is it because the fat ones are just too hot to do anything, to do exercise?
As someone who's been up and down in my weight most of my life, when you are heavy, like really heavy, God, you sweat at the drop of the hat.
Really?
And
just from any little bit of exercise?
Yeah, because if you think about it, just simple day-to-day stuff is like... the effort required is much higher because, you're basically carrying around a couple of suitcases worth of fat. And so you tend to sweat very easily.
I would say a very good measurement is, do you know those spring water bottles that you get in offices and
the big
hospitals and stuff?
Yeah, for the water cooler.
Yeah, the water cooler, they weigh 3 stone.
Really?
So if you're 3 stone overweight, or
that's what you're carrying around.
If you're 6 stone overweight, so say you should be, say, 14 stone, but you're 20 stone.
Yep. It's like 2 of those things strapped to your belly.
Everything.
Yep.
Carrying 2 water bottles around. So
absolutely.
Try and even get off the couch, go to the jacks, or even go to the fridge, or, go upstairs or something like that, and carry 2 spring water bottles with you.
You're absolutely right. Look, I know this from personal experience. Simple stuff like, Jesus, a gentle walk with the dog around the block. You come back and your pits are sweaty. It's like, oh, bloody hell. And that's one of the things you notice when you lose weight. Then obviously you don't. It's great. But you do notice the cold a hell of a lot more. I mean, I never felt cold when I was sort of my heaviest weight because why would I? I'm wearing
insulation.
A big jacket of blubber. Yeah. And when I lose the weight, I'm like, bloody hell, that's freezing. And my wife was sort of going, yeah.
So do you think because the lack of air conditioning in those states like that people just, you started to become heavy, so you just stopped doing exercise because, as you say, you just sweat just walking down the road?
You couldn't. God, you have to be almost like an IV drip rehydrating you. Yeah. But the thing about obesity in the States is it's more of an economic thing, really. Because you go to somewhere like New York or Boston or San Fran, majority of people in these wealthier areas are really fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you live in a poor area of the States, and I've driven through some area this year, like in Alabama and stuff, like if you, even with the best will in the world, you want to say, I'm going to eat healthy. It's impossible because there's no decent supermarkets, very little fresh produce. It's cheaper often just to bring your kids to McD's, you know.
Yeah. And it's air conditioned.
Oh yeah, of course. I do remember though being in Florida, you know, one of these Disneyland World things. I think it was about 10 years ago actually, and I do remember I was actually at the time quite fit. I was at a low weight for me, and I saw this poor dude, you know, cast member as they call them, you know. I think he was standing outside in Disney World in June in Florida, and he was as big as a house. Like he was probably 25 plus, basically. God. And I just thought, oh my God, he must be miserable. I mean, even standing under an air conditioner would still be a bit uncomfortable for him, you know. But yeah. And
have you heard about this project they're building in Saudi Arabia called The Line?
Oh, yeah, I have actually.
Do you know anything about it? I was only reading a few things about it, but is it a kilometre long or something?
Oh, no, you're talking about like hundreds of kilometres or 100 kilometres long. It's
is it just a giant office? What is it?
Not quite, no, it's actually like a city. Now, the thing is, from what I've heard about it, I look at a lot of YouTube, particularly when I'm doing other things, you know, and I think they had there's a show called Mega Projects, and they look at things like this. But essentially, the idea is like if you can imagine a city, but instead of like laid out in a circle, it's laid out in a line. And
so, is it about like maybe half a mile thick or something like that?
Oh, not even like probably maybe I'm not sure. Maybe 500 meters thick or something.
And it must have a railway go through it or some tram.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
The idea. Now, I don't think it's being built, if you know what I mean. They've pumped billions of dollars into this project.
But they haven't started it.
They may have built some of it, but it's never going to be. It just doesn't work. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
No.
Well, it's like even if you had like a type of like an X, it would make more sense than just a straight line. You know, to have a central area that you can go to. So say, like at 8 points or something like that. You know what I mean? But to have one line, it was a curious project while they were thinking of it. I don't know, is it because you can't build on sand or something like that? I'm not too sure.
I really
why.
don't know why. Because if you think about it, it's if you're trying to build a new city, well, if people from one end have to take even a high-speed train an hour and a half to get to the other, it's not much of a city. It's just a series of thin communities along the line. But,
I think it's human beings, as far as I know, the perfect temperature for human beings is 21 degrees or something like that.
Oh, right.
21, 22 degrees. So if you go into most
room temperature.
Yeah. So if you go into most offices during the height of winter, the height of summer, they'll all be 21, 22 degrees. Mm-hmm. The amount of energy that must consume.
Oh,
like
huge.
If you had a state like Tennessee that before that didn't have it fluctuated as the weather fluctuated, all the temperatures. You had the fans and stuff. But to keep the whole place at 21 to 22 degrees, can you imagine the cost of that?
Oh, huge. And I mean, now, being clever, of course, put massive solar arrays on every office block. And even, I read a book looked at climate change, not just from like, oh my God, what can we do to stop it happening? But it was more... I would say, in my opinion, more realistic in that, look, some element is going to happen if it's not happened already. So how do we mitigate the effects? Yeah. And simple things they mentioned in these really warm cities, like say Phoenix or Los Angeles, they could make a local ordinance that all buildings have to have white roofs, you know what I mean? Yeah. Which would reduce the so-called urban heat island effect, you know what I mean? You'd reflect this light back into the in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. But...
I was at a thing in, there's a place called, it's the RNA or the RLA, God, it's the one on Kildare Street in Dublin. It's, the Royal Academy. Okay. And there was a guy doing, he was talking about particulates in the air, so diesel particulates. Yeah. And, he was saying that global warming, the temperatures are not going to drop for at least 30 years because the particulates stay up in the air for 30 years. So what we're burning currently, and a particulate is something that comes off the burning of a fuel, and it reflects the heat from the ground back down. And so he said, even if we stop burning right now, it'll take us 30 years to get through this.
That, if you like, to clear,
which is fair enough, So it was a very convincing lecture that he did.
It's interesting that, not so much now, but remember 10, 15 years ago, geez, every car, you couldn't actually buy a petrol Mercedes.
That's right,
they were all turbo diesels.
Yeah. Do you remember Volkswagen lied about their stats?
Yes, Dieselgate.
Jesus
Yeah,
God,
and actually that leads on to what I was going to say. That, while Europe, like all over Europe, Germany, France, the UK, ourselves, everyone were like, I think the vast majority of car sales for a while were turbo diesels, which, in fairness, my wife has a turbo diesel E-Class, and it's a lovely car to drive. However, the thing is, okay, so because they've better fuel economy, considerably actually, therefore they're burning less fuel overall, and therefore they're producing less carbon dioxide. But what they ignored was the fact that this diesel produces all this nitrous oxide and particulates and all sorts of stuff. Now, the latest ones, they've minimized it. But for that reason, in fairness to the American authorities, they were kind of looking at Europe and saying, yeah, well, we know, guys, you're lowering your CO2 emissions, but have you not considered particulates, NOx, and all that stuff? They hadn't, whereas the Americans did, and that's why.
So they weren't lying; they just weren't paying attention to particulars. Is that right?
No,
were
they okay? In
were they cooking the books?
Oh no, Volkswagen were it's one of the greatest, if you like, corporate malfeasance out there.
Yeah.
I mean, no, they
were the scientists cooking the books and telling management the wrong information.
No, it was very clever. Okay, so if you like, the criteria, to license or homologate or whatever a diesel engine for use, say, in a car in the States, was particularly much stricter, I think, the emissions than, say, in Europe.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's not unusual. The Americans, in fairness, have kind of led the way. They were the first to go on leaded petrol.
Oh, I see.
Mind you, they were the first to go leaded petrol in the first place. So,
Yeah.
But the thing about it was, in order to meet the tests, so they could sell these turbo diesel Volkswagens, which were a big hit because they were nice to drive, really cheap to run. They had a cheat mode in the car's, ECU or computer. So the car could figure out that it was being tested, because you can imagine it's a particular, you put it on a whatever dyno or what of those machines are. So the car could tell, it could figure it out from the data it was receiving, and it would switch into, low emissions mode. But then you drive it out the door and drive it normally, and it's back into not compliant mode.
Oh my God.
Cost them billions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
I wonder.
Deservedly so.
I was at this lecture on particulars, so it was fantastic. There was Q&As and all that stuff. And then the last guy to ask a question from the back of the room, God, it was amazing. Yeah. He stood up and he asked a question which put a seed into people's heads to the doubt of the lecturer's statistics.
Okay.
And I went, geez, that's a very good point. I never thought about that, And the lecturer said, I just want to introduce you to, we call him Mr. X, the guy at the back of the room. He works for the oil companies.
I think I know him.
And his job is to follow me around. He said he's been to every lecture I've been to. And what he does is, at the end, he asks the questions like this to put a seed of doubt into your heads.
Yep.
And everyone turned around, and your man just didn't care. He was sitting there.
Oh, no.
And we all laughed a bit. But then we were leaving, and we went, God, maybe Mr. X had a point in that question. You know what I mean? So he just put a seed of doubt in your head to the validity of the lecturer's thesis. And you were going, God, maybe the guy from the oil companies has a point. But it doesn't make a difference. All his job is to put that seed of doubt into your head. It's fascinating, isn't it?
The thing is, though, just about things like... so what happens, it seems, every, 10 years or so, governments, or they'll find out, everyone should be driving turbo diesels, right? So it was, massively incentivized in Europe. Yeah. And now, in the last 5 to 10 years, they're thinking, oh, God, no, okay, that was a mistake. So obviously now the push is for electric cars. And I'm a big fan. I have an electric car. I love it. Yeah. But the problem is the legislators are pushing for one-size-fits-all legislation. And it's wrong because, as you and I discovered last week, or you remember we went out to a friend's mother's funeral in my electric car, and it was extremely cold, very unusual for Ireland.
right,
it was around freezing. God, it drained the battery so fast. I mean, I left the home with 45% on the battery, which would normally last me a couple of days, to be honest. And, we had to charge to make sure I got home with enough things. So, therefore, I understand why some people in the States, for example, we have a friend who lives in Boston, and I did talk to him about this, and he said, yeah, they're great, but it's not for me. Because, in the winter in somewhere like Boston, they're severely affected by the cold. And it is true in the States, some people, not all, maybe 10, 50%, would regularly drive quite long distance. In his case, down a couple of states to see his son in college. So for those people, I say, you're absolutely right. Electric car is not for you. But if you're Joe Blogs driving in and out to the city all day and you live somewhere where the climate's a bit more temperate, they're brilliant. You know what I mean?
I enjoy listening to arguments about pro
or anti.
What's the phrase? Yeah, green, not green.
Global
warming,
environmental stuff. Oh, right.
Yeah. And people say, "Oh, yeah, should we been through ice? Ice ages. We're coming to the end of our ice age, so therefore rises up." And you can look at, if you look at things that happen in the geological strata, you can see that it's just a natural process. Then you see everyone saying, "Well, if we're burning all this," but my theory is that I analogize it to a car garage, and if you have a car garage and you turn the engine on
in a garage,
yes,
and you run the car,
and you run the engine in it, the car garage is going to fill up with the engine smoke.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make a difference. I'd rather live in a garage that's not full of smoke. So
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Actually.
So I don't care if it's. We do know the Earth's atmosphere is contained, obviously.
Yeah.
So we're either going to fill it up with smoke, which might fall down, particulates come back down to Earth, and all that type of stuff, or it mightn't. But it doesn't really make a difference whether the theory.
The vast majority of scientific opinion is it's real, and there's lots of empirical evidence.
There is evidence. It's there's a thing called
year after year, temperature records are being broken.
But there is a thing called the tragedy of the commons, and the tragedy of the commons is that it comes from if you have say an acre of grass and you have 3 sheep farmers, and you say, look, each of you put 10 sheep on. And we'll make sure the commons is okay, and everyone will have their 10 sheep. Then some farmer says, "Well, I'm going to put 12 sheep on," and then some farmer, "I'm going to put 14 sheep on." So,
and before you know it,
it's just that some idea that works at the start just really, and unfortunately, it's just down to human nature, which I am one, so I'm guilty. So my analogy of the car garage is it is a very simple one, but it's just saying I don't care whether it's real or not. I just would rather live in a garage.
Do you know, I did see that. A book I read about climate change, and this book actually about mitigation. Yeah. And it did say that. It said, look, 95% of scientists, say it's real, but 5% who are, usually members of the Republican Party in the States say, oh, no, it's not. But, while they pocket big wedges of cash from ExxonMobil or whatever. But this is the guy who was saying... Allegedly. Yeah. Anyway, but, this book was sort of saying, even if it's not true, isn't it better to get rid of emissions? And even on a geopolitical stage, say the vast majority of your transport fleet are powered by electricity or hybrid, you're going to greatly reduce the amount of oil and gas you need to import, assuming you're a country that doesn't produce it itself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So therefore, you're not, the things like the 70s, the oil shocks, which caused massive dislocation to society. It's a good thing. You're weaning yourself off that, and that can only be good,
I listened to a farmer up in County Cavan. he does a podcast. He's an ex-guard and he's a farmer now, but he's very informed. And he's one of the greatest objectors to the windmills that we're building in Ireland. Yeah. And now I got to admit this guy knows his stuff. Yeah. Right. I've looked up a few of the research papers he's done. And he talked about that they're net consumers of energy. Obviously, you got to put the blades somewhere when you're finished, and all that.
Yeah.
And again, I say to myself, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but you got to get there, right?
And by the way, it's also evolving fast.
Yeah. So you start building these things, they're a disaster. They go on fire. You have too much plastic, and you got to, you say, well.
And as you say, the blades aren't recyclable.
Yeah.
But apparently they are now. Because they're developing them.
Or else someone will say, well, instead of using blades made of plastic, why don't we try wood?
Yep.
So all these things take time to happen. It doesn't expect to happen now. But he's constantly giving out about, the waste of money. But if you do have the money to spare, I don't see any problem with doing it. Because as you say,
especially for Ireland, because we have to import all oil and gas.
And all tech where you start somewhere is a disaster.
Oh, yeah.
As you were saying, what was that Darwin Award you were saying about the guy who tried to go up to space?
Well, this is a guy in, I don't know, Texas or somewhere,
with no air conditioning.
Firm flat earther. And the only, because these people are impervious to facts,
it just means the conspiracy goes deeper.
This is it. It goes deeper than we thought. Yeah. So he thought the only way to prove or disprove that the Earth is flat or not was to build his own homemade rocket in his backyard, which kind of looked like something, Oscar the Grouch would live in on Sesame Street with some fins and a bomb underneath it.
Well, the fins make it go faster.
Yeah, and the stripes.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
Basically, this guy, I think the town wherever he lived, or kept stopping him, saying, "No, you can't do this, for God's sakes." Eventually, I don't know whether I doubt he got permission, but eventually he did lit the fuse, and up he went. Yeah. And
he didn't think about getting down, did he?
Well, yeah, he basically was strawberry jam.
I've seen flat earthers on serious news shows, well, relatively serious, Good
Morning. Must be there for comic relief.
Well, Good Morning Britain and places and things like that, relatively serious shows
and serious journalism. Yeah.
No matter what scientists they have on, they say no. These are pictures that were taken from space.
Yeah.
How do we know that you didn't send up cameras? Which the purpose of, you can see by the focal length of the camera that it makes a square into a circle, so that's why we think it's. And then one scientist said, "Tell you what, you stay here. I'm going to fly to LA.
Yeah.
Okay. You come back on the show tomorrow or Thursday or whatever day. I'm going to phone you with my camera phone of me in the dark in LA.
Oh, yeah.
While you're in sunlight in London." And your man said, "No, I'm not doing that." But it was kind of like the flat earther wasn't doing it to take the mickey out of everybody. Or else if he was a bloody good actor, because he just kept standing by his principles. How could you couldn't be that thick though?
No, I think it's mental illness, to be honest.
Do you think so?
To a degree, yeah. I mean, I had
mental illness. I never thought of that, really.
Yeah. No, I mean, or not so much mental illness, but a personality disorder, just some quirk in your head that ain't right. And it can.
That makes a lot of sense, because I was thinking either this guy's a bloody good actor or
no, he probably believes it. But it's the same thing. I saw a funny thing about the view out your window on the flat Earth and in New York, and there's the Statue of Liberty. In the distance, there's Big Ben. There's because it's all. Oh, you should be able to see with the large telescope right to the other side of the world, but you can't.
I think it was proved. Look, I'm going to guess.
Was it Galileo or one of these?
No,
guys?
it was even before that. It was a French lad, I think, what he did, and he took two measurements. He basically put up two large pieces of wood.
Oh yeah.
And he put the wood at midday in some area, and then he walked 100 miles south and put an equivalent height.
Okay.
And at midday, further on south, the shadow was shorter.
Yeah.
Then he walked another 100 miles, and he walked at midday.
Jesus, doing the fit.
I know. So you had three different poles giving three different shadows from three different locations of considerable distance away, and therefore you could figure out that at midday it cast a different shadow.
Interesting. Because he probably had to have people, obviously they wouldn't have walkie-talkies or mobile phones, but they would probably have someone instructed to make certain observations at a certain time of day.
Well, midday was midday. So midday
Yeah.
up here it's midday up here. But if you go down to say you go another 60 degrees south, which is 360 miles, then it's a different. Midday down there. It is midday, but it'll cast a different shadow.
Because it's a zone. Like, I mean,
Yes.
if you're on one side of a time zone versus to the other,
Yeah.
Obviously your day will be a different length and so forth. What's very interesting is
It's also how they found the distance to the moon. The distance to the moon was found about the 15th century, and he was only out by 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
He just used Pythagoras' theorem.
Wow.
He just took one measurement. And
so he had 2 points of reference on the Earth.
200,
and then obviously...
maybe now for the curvature of the Earth, it wasn't a flat line, but it was like 100-mile distance.
Yeah, close enough.
Yes, and he measured the angle of where he was on the first to the moon, walked 100 miles. That was the base of the triangle. Took the second angle to the moon at the same time.
Yeah.
And by measuring the two angles and having the base, he could tell the distance of the sides of the triangle and therefore how far the moon was. And he was only out. Now I presume it was down to the curvature of the
probably that was what he did.
Miles.
That was what. Yeah. So I bet if you were to, obviously with modern computers and so on, calculate that variable, probably get the
same answer. Yeah,
do you know?
Yeah, I think though it's kind of it's interesting to say mental illness. That never occurred to me, and that really makes a mockery of that show. To be honest, bringing somebody on like that.
No, look. Maybe I'm a bit harsh, but
unless he gets paid for it, maybe.
No. There are people who really do believe these things. I'm in my former life as a GP, if you like. I had a patient one day come in, literally going on about effing chemtrails in the air,
From the airplanes?
Yeah. And I literally said, oh, listen, come on, shall I get you a tinfoil hat? And he got really annoyed with me. And I was like, well, okay, but like, don't expect me to sit here and listen to that.
Or let's go to a shrink.
It's crap. It's pure crap. Okay, and I'm not going to entertain that.
What was the theory about the chemtrails that they were?
Well, the thing is, obviously,
exhaust from the engines,
jet engine, or even the bombers in World War II. If you look at a picture from like the big bombing raids, the B-17s going into Germany, there's these long white contrails coming away from them. Because what's happening at certain altitudes, you've got the exhaust of the piston engine, or in the case of a jet engine, a massive efflux of air coming out the back. And depending on the temperature, the altitude, the pressure, it turns into water vapor. And that's what you're seeing. There's water vapor. It's not, some dudes up in the cockpit going, right,
push this button now.
Here, contrails on.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
But it is funny. I think a lot of this actually comes from, say, the early 70s, with Watergate and all these things, which really destroyed public trust in government.
Yeah.
And because of that, I think people now are very cynical, much more so, say, than they would have been 50 plus years ago,
Right.
Maybe,
That is a bit mad. It's kind of maybe because we have so much information now or something like that, that it's,
And it's not unfiltered.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah. Like I think I did tell you about the guy who said that the World Trade Center was explosive.
Oh, the inside job.
Going on each floor. And I just said, are you insane?
He's not alone in that. But,
But he was deadly serious. And he started to give out to me for questioning this. And I said, I'm a civil engineer by education. Yeah. I did this in structures. Yeah. It was one of our courses.
And everything they say, like, for example, ignited jet fuel can't melt steel. It's like, well, yeah, it actually can.
Of course it
Especially
can.
if the impact knocked all the insulation. There was, the steel girders had I guess some sort of foam insulation sprayed on them to insulate them in the case of fire.
But also you have all the burning of all the other stuff around. You have the burning of paneling, desks,
paper,
anything.
Yep.
Just make that an inferno,
I know.
And it's anyway, he still... I do find that it's fascinating. This whole sort of it's a rabbit hole that people go down, and you just turn left and you turn left and you turn left and you turn left, and
that's
at no time will you ever think about turning right. So
every time I see one of these, whether it be the moon landing, whether it be whatever chemtrails, whatever, you'll have one of these people saying something, and then the expert will go, "Well, yeah, there's a simple explanation, and here it is, and there's the proof." right, but what about the next thing? It's never like, never ever, oh, okay. No,
you made
it
an
won't,
interesting point about people arguing about things, that there's always a central way, really. And when it comes to global warming, you have the advocates who are saying it doesn't, or who say, look, we got to do something, and then let's do extremes, such as, change all the energy over by 3 years' time or something.
Ban cars,
crazy,
stop flying.
Yeah, and then you have the other side who says there's no such thing as it. And I think you have to find a middle. Now, obviously, finding a middle doesn't make it interesting for the people watching it, or
It's really only the United States among developed economies. They're the outlier, and when there's Biden was in, they were fully on board. When Obama isn't fully on board, but I do think there's a lot of sort of lobbying, in terms of the oil and gas industry in the States. And I mean, listen,
do you think it is a tragedy of the commons? That China and India are becoming middle class.
Well, it's putting huge resource pressure on resources, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mind you, though.
So, is there any point in anyone doing anything when you've got nearly half the world's population who are just igniting, for want of a better phrase?
I suppose there's always a point, maybe even just to keep yourself busy, like your man on the escaping the shark. Just tell him something else, and whatever. Keep calm and carry on.
Yeah.
But there is some hope, if you like, in that China and India now are on board with this thing. Like, I mean, they had a very good argument. They said, listen, we need to develop. You guys developed, so we need to develop.
Yeah. Which I think they should be allowed.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, look, you can't stop them either way. But I do think that...
but I don't think we can give out about it and say, how dare you build
totally
coal fire when we burnt half the bogs we have in this country, which is highly inefficient compared to coal,
I know, but it's... I suppose gave employment is probably the main reason. But, I think, even if... half the world is still polluting, but if the other half are all, nuclear fusion, wind energy, electric cars, or whatever, it might balance out at least, whereas if we all do nothing, it'll just be a total disaster,
Well, also, I think you're right about the development of science, that even if you have the Western world, so I'm including the United States and Europe in this, even if you have them working on the concept of it, a breakthrough will happen.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be... Now, I'm not saying free energy as in cold fusion or something like that, but something will happen.
Have fusion in 10 years' time.
Yeah.
That's it. It's always 10 years away.
Yeah. I personally think the best way to go forward is nuclear energy myself. Yeah, we have about 200 years of uranium, and by the time the uranium runs out, we'll either figure out some other isotopes we can use to cause the chain reactions.
I think, now again, I don't know much about this, but there's a thing of thorium reactors, whatever thorium is. It's another element.
Yeah.
So even then, they're already at that point.
Yeah.
And
do you not think, but once we get to Titan and places like that, which are relatively not that far away, which we will probably be, not planet hopping, well, we'll be able to go around the solar system in 150 years, 100 years.
Probably,
That other planets will have a lot of uranium on it and different heavy metals like that.
What do you mean, Uranus and stuff?
Yes. Uranus. Of all
Uranus.
Or
what is it on Futurama? Your man Fry ends up 1,000 years in the future, and he's laughing about Uranus, and Professor Fry goes, "Oh, they changed the name of that planet to stop that stupid joke forever." Well, what's it called now? Urectum.
I think Uranus was one of the Titans. The old Greek Titans, I think. I think that's where the name comes from. I'll check that.
Oh, probably,
yeah. We were at a poke quiz a few weeks ago, and
the one your sister organised.
Great, but one question which the quiz master said 90% of people got wrong would: what is the furthest planet in the solar system away from the sun?
Did we say Neptune?
We said Neptune, but 90% said Pluto, which got downgraded.
Would have been correct.
Up to about 10 years ago or something. Yeah.
Now it's
it got downgraded as a planet, didn't it?
Something.
Yeah. Oh, did they find some other planet?
No. It's just that the way Pluto was considered the 9th planet, but they've reevaluated and say, look, I presume there's a set of criteria to call something a planet as opposed to a moon,
A rock.
or a rock,
Yeah.
and therefore it doesn't meet all the criteria. So I'm sure there's like people who won't accept that and say, how dare you, Yeah, it's nothing new. Another thing we're talking. I remember I was going to talk about time zones and stuff. Well, one thing was, I think somewhere like Kiribati, or one of these very small Pacific micronations, that was east of New Zealand, but it was the other side of the international date line. So
Just
New
by
Zealand,
accident of
yeah,
geography and drawing.
yeah, it was
wow.
literally just on the other side of the line.
Yeah.
So, and this is not unusual. They decided there a few years ago to say, right, we're going to change to the previous time zone, which means we'll actually be, say, 2 hours or 1 hour ahead of New Zealand, with whom we deal the most, right?
But we're going to lose a day.
Yep. Instead of being like 23 hours behind them. And they just agreed to say, whatever way it was, when they did it, Saturday, and then it was Monday.
Yeah.
They didn't have the Sunday. But of course, one group in the was the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Oh, for God's sake.
And I remember, don't know if they've done
That's
this, but at the
genius.
time,
They
were
have to
saying,
have their 7th day.
well, they were saying, like, you can't destroy a day, and we're going to observe it as if it never happened, so they'd never be on the right day again.
So the 6th-day advocates or the
Well,
8th
there you
day,
go.
Are they 6th or the 8th?
But they couldn't, but it was like, nope, no, we won't accept this,
That's pretty cool, crossing that international date line. I was in Sydney flying to Vancouver.
Oh, yeah.
And the flight stopped in Hawaii. And I'm just trying to think about this now. But I phoned my sister, and it was her birthday back in Ireland.
Yeah.
So that would have been, 12 hours behind us, right? So
But in fact, you would have been behind...
No, I was 12 hours ahead.
okay.
Yeah. So I was 12 hours ahead. So for my sister, it was 8 a.m. when I phoned her.
Yeah.
And it was her birthday. Then I wished her happy birthday. Then I flew to Hawaii, crossed the international date line, which was still her birthday. Sorry, which was the start of her birthday.
Oh, yeah.
But now she was 12 hours
Ahead of
ahead of
you.
me. Yes.
It's bizarre.
Can you get that? So it was, yeah.
It's
So-
hard to get a head
so
around.
it's trying to get your head around it. So I phoned her and I said, it's now breakfast where I am on your birthday. And she went, what? And she said, are you drunk? And I said, no, I'm not drunk. I said, I just thought it'd be interesting phoning you at the end of the day on your birthday and at the start of the day. Does that make sense? Is that right? Have I got that right?
Well,
anyway,
no, you are. You are. I mean, if you travel west to east going across the Pacific, you basically go back in time.
That's
almost.
right.
It's just because you're going to an area time zone.
Yeah.
I tell you,
It's pretty cool though, phoning her.
Oh, very
Yeah.
much so.
Yeah.
Time zones are interesting, though. Well, to my nerdy brain, because I think the way we have Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah.
So we're at the exact same time as it is in London, as it is in Galway, as in Edinburgh,
right.
whatever, or indeed Portugal. And that used to be the case. It was the advent of the railways.
That's right.
Did that because before that, time was local. So in London it'd be like midday, but then you go to Cornwall, it's probably like 11:45 or something, because it was more the local thing. And of course that wouldn't work for railway timetables.
How could a
But
train
it's not.
leave at 12 o'clock from London
Yeah.
and get to Cornwall at 12 o'clock?
Yeah, or for example, they'd have to be. It'd be much more difficult to work out timetables.
Yeah.
So if the train journey was 3 hours long and you leave at 12, London at 12, you just say, well, you arrive at your destination at 3.
Yeah.
But then you'd be thinking, oh no, well, what's the local time zone in that small area?
It is incredible. As far as I know, the French were offered it, or the French came up. If you go to Paris, there's a thing called the Rose Line that goes through Paris.
Oh yeah.
And it goes through most of France. But
You mean is that that was supposed to be the prime meridian or whatever?
yeah, and if you walk in Paris and you look down on the ground the odd time, you see these rose lines. It's like a rose, and it was called the Rose Line, and it goes through most of France. I think. But either they turned down that it was going to be the centre, or they couldn't get their act together. So the British,
hence it became Greenwich.
Yeah.
Not to mention, of course, I think it was because
the Navy.
Yeah. They were the king of the sea, really.
It was amazing. There was a guy called Harrison, was the guy who made the watch. And because they can figure out latitude, which is obviously going from north to south, and every 60 degrees north is 1 degree is 60 miles.
Okay.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if you go 60 degrees from the equator up 60 degrees,
Yeah.
that's 60 by 6, that's 360 miles.
Wow.
So you knew...
That's how they navigated.
Yeah, so from the equator, you knew exactly where you were, north to south.
Wow.
Now, longitude, because of the curvature of the Earth,
Yep.
does not work that way.
Oh, okay.
So therefore, they used to take approximations. They could never figure out you couldn't have a clock on a ship because
because
pendulum
not originally. I think.
Yeah, and
later
that's why
did, yeah.
if you look at most movies, they have those things
Sextants?
No, do you know where you flip the hour the hourglass? Yeah, so
that's an hour.
Yeah, so
right.
Yeah, but
And
again, if the
letting
ship's
out the rope with the knots in it.
yeah, well that was
Hence
speed.
why knots became
Well, that was speed. But for time, if the hourglass was at some angle, it would go slower through.
Yeah.
So the British Navy then put a prize through the King saying the first person to invent anything that we can figure out time from Greenwich Mean
Oh yeah.
wins a 5,000 like it's a huge prize because this was going to be the big one, because then the British Navy could tell exactly where they were compared to any other navy.
Yeah, it was a huge advantage.
And there's a guy called Harrison invented it,
Okay.
and he invented the watch. So the watch then was
like a
not
wristwatch.
or
a pocket watch.
Pocket watch.
Wow.
So it was not dependent on pendulums, not dependent. So no
And
matter
it would
what
be-
angle
it
the
could
boat
be
was at,
Yeah, it wouldn't be affected by movement. Essentially.
100%.
Wow.
So then the British could and what they do is they would take the time of the watch,
Okay.
measure it against Greenwich Mean. So
Okay.
they left Greenwich Mean at 12 o'clock on a Sunday.
Yep.
On Friday, they could look at their watch and they'd say 2 o'clock on Friday.
Yeah.
And they could
Now,
say...
it wouldn't be 2 o'clock where they are. But
100%,
they know it was 2
yes.
o'clock back in Greenwich.
Greenwich.
Yeah.
It was so it'd be 2 p.m. back in Greenwich, so they could measure the exact distance they've gone longitudinally.
Wow.
So therefore, their navy could be exactly
Yeah.
in a place.
They could turn up
100%,
right where they
yeah.
wanted to be,
Whereas-
as opposed to by chance.
Yeah. Whereas the French Navy and the Spanish Navy would be taking approximations, saying,
Yeah.
"Well, we think we're here,
I know.
and there's land." But it's interesting, wasn't it?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do
man
you know what's
Harrison.
another thing about Greenwich Mean Time? Interesting, Portugal is on the same time zone as we are.
Yeah.
And Spain was, up until the advent of Franco, who we were talking about earlier.
Took them off.
because he changed Spain from Greenwich Mean Time into Central European Time because he wanted it on the same time zone as the French and the Germans and all. But actually, if you look at the map, I mean, Spain is essentially south of London, most of it.
yeah.
So it's in the wrong time zone, and it's a pain in the arse when you're coming. I remember driving from the Algarve to Seville years ago, and you think, oh, bugger, it's an hour later. You lose an hour. You know.
Also, politics. India and Pakistan, there's a half an hour difference.
Really?
It was just either the Pakistanis to piss the Indians off or the Indians
Or
to
vice
piss
versa.
Yeah.
There's no love lost there, my God.
So they put the clocks in half an hour. I mean, that's a real... Instead of doing the full hour, it's a bit daft doing the half an hour. But just to finish off, because we are actually running out of time.
Are we?
There was only one time in my life where I didn't know what time it was. And it was, again, back in Australia. Anyway, but we were going from Western Australia. Sorry, we were going from Queensland to Western Australia on the train.
Oh, right, so you're going east to west.
Yeah. So we had the train time. Then you had Queensland was either half an hour or an hour ahead of Western Australia.
Yeah.
The hour had just gone back on the clock, right? So, and then you had the Aussie time of, there was a fifth time thing, I can't think of it.
Yeah.
So we were in the smoking car and this girl says, anyone know what time it is? And I swear to God, for an hour, we all talked about what time.
Well,
we couldn't figure out.
Depending on this set of facts.
Yeah. Some said, well, we just crossed the Western Australian border, so that's an extra hour. And they go, no, it's an extra half an hour. So anyway,
Sure, I mean,
stupid way to end.
Just recently, every October, fall back. We
Spring
use
forward
an
and
hour.
fall back.
So it's 2 a.m. and then it's 2:59 and then it's 2 a.m. again. You know what I mean?
That's
It's
mad, isn't it?
bizarre.
That is time. Okay, listen, we're out of time.
Okay, sounds good. I think hopefully we talked about some interesting stuff. Yeah. And we'll see you the next time.
All right. Adios,
Cheers.
amigos.
Adios.